welcome to the Solar Nations 2 tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to do some of the basics of the game, how to get the United Colonies from where it is in 2092 to a much better position. So the first thing that you want to do is handle your factions. A lot of people struggle with this, but the important thing about factions is to keep this number as high as possible while keeping this number as low as possible. So the United Colonies, being a liberal republic, naturally has a relatively high approval among its laborers and its middle class, but has a lot of problems when it comes to the bureaucratic and ideological factions. Now, what that kind of means is that you're going to want to be careful which factions you give privileges to, because if you give privileges to a faction that is unhappy, it gets stronger. But the important thing is to give privileges to the factions that are strong and loyal. So I am going to give this privilege to the laborers to strengthen them, and I'm also going to move the aristocrats out of the rulership pool and put the middle class in. Now, the reason why I want to do that is because that will weaken the upper class, and it will strengthen the middle class and give me more of a loyalty floor here. So what I can do is I can tax more. And income taxes and resource taxes are kind of equivalent in the early game, but the most important thing is to make sure that you're making a good amount of money, because the more money you have, the more things you can build and the faster you can expand. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my research, because that is also very important. What I'm going to pick, generally speaking, the good strategy is to always go with Unity first, because Unity is a lot more difficult. Not only is it more difficult to get later in the game than research is, but also Unity improves your stability and research does not. So I'm going to focus on integration and psychology. Those generally tend to be the best ones. And I'm going to unpause. Now, the United Colonies is sort of uniquely split between two different planets. So we kind of have to choose which one we want to focus on. In this case, I'm going to focus on Mars, because that is what I want to do. Now, in terms of what there is to do here, we also want to try and increase our deposits and get some more money out of our economy. In the early game, deposits are very good for that sort of thing, because you get basically free money from them, right? And the buildings to build them aren't that expensive. So I'm going to build up some of these relatively cheap buildings, and look at that, I'm in debt. Now, the real problem with debt is that penalty right there, okay? The larger that penalty gets, the more of a problem it can be. You can already see what it does when it's at 4%. If this thing gets to like 100% or 200%, then it can basically destroy your game right then and there. Now, you kind of want to pick and choose who you want to attack and who you don't want to attack. Now, another good idea for space nations, especially the United Colonies, is to expand early with some colonies. Now, I chose this colony because of the heavy metals here, right? Consumer goods are a very good early game money resource, and so getting a lot of them is really valuable. So we finished this research, right? We finished this culture, and we're getting another one, which is good. And you saw my stability started to increase a little bit faster. And you want that also, because the faster your stability increases, the faster you can conquer more territory and form stronger countries and get stronger, because we have our enemy down here is another great power, or relative great power in space terms, who is becoming very dangerous. So we want to make sure that if we want to eventually gain control of Mars, that we outdo them in this area. Now, you see my military, and this is actually very important. Your military is one of the biggest consumers of these capacities right here. And you have to be very careful that they don't go into the negatives. Industrial capacity especially, because that one's very easy, very useful, and very easy to use. So instead of making your industrial capacity go negative, you always want to have a little bit of a surplus. It can be a good way to make money too. As you can see, many of these countries are selling industrial capacity, and therefore the price is relatively low. But it's still a good way to make money, pretty much universally, to just mass sell industrial capacity. It's always useful. But in the same way, industrial capacity is not terribly useful to buy unless you have a very large population like some countries do. So you can see that this country is going to war with this country, which is also at war with this country. Lots of things going on. We want to take advantage of the chaos and go to war with them while they're distracted, because that is a good way to take advantage of the AI, right? A very good way to do it. Now, their army is much weaker than ours, so we don't really have much to worry about. But if it was, this would be a very good opportunity to get a relatively free war, basically, for little effort expended on our part, which is always something you want to take advantage of, especially since the AI is pretty aggressive if it is stronger than you, at least on the higher difficulties. Now that I'm done with these two, okay, I can continue researching more Unity, and that is generally what I'd recommend. But I have quite a bit of stability right now, so I think I will focus on getting to automated industry, because this building right here is instrumental for space nations beyond, like, basically anything, okay? Now, the important thing about the automated factory is it gives you automated workforce. Now, what does automated workforce mean? Well, if you consider that 1 million of your population, right, if you consider 1 million of your population, about maybe 60% of them work. An automated workforce therefore counts for about 1, maybe 2 million, depending on how industrialized you are. So it's always good to build those, especially as a space nation, because they're not that expensive, but they do scale very quickly. And I will bring attention, by the way, to this cost number. You see, it's not the same in every instance, which is unusual. But the thing is that as you build more projects, and as you build more of the same project in one region, the project gets more expensive. So you can see here, and the second level of infrastructure is 25% more expensive than the first. Now, project cost scaling is exponential. And what that means is that the bigger that red positive number gets, like if this was plus 100%, it wouldn't be just plus 100%. It would be e to the power of 1 plus e to the power of 1%, which is much higher. And so you want to make sure that you are keeping an eye on your project cost, and always make sure, if you can, to get project cost reduction modifiers. Those are some of the most useful and also some of the most common resources in the game in terms of like text give them, other kinds of projects give them. Once again, I'm taking advantage of the AI's aggression and trying to get some easy wars in, so that I can get more territory without having to proportionally work that hard. The thing with these regions you also have to be careful of is the colonization, right? The colonization stability cost and space capacity cost. Because my capital is on the moon, I have to expend space fleet capacity in order to send colonists here. And the more colonists I have, the more it costs. So you see, I added more colonists, and now I have less. Now, the United Colonies starts with space capacity, which is a big advantage that they have. Again, if you're a new player, I would probably recommend playing a country like the United Colonies. Relatively strong countries are a lot more stable in this game relative to smaller countries. But every country is playable, and there's a lot of funny things you can do with small countries. Oh, and this is something I forgot, actually. You need to make sure to increase this, especially if you're the United Colonies, because the education value determines how big your research will be in the future. So, United Colonies being a low population country, it's actually very advantageous for them to pick these relatively early on. But for a larger population country, like India, for example, you do not want to spend a lot on education until you have your economy under control. So another thing is this aspect. Now, this looks a little weird. So what is this? Well, basically, these are different variants of the same reform. So you can see if I have private education, I gain middle class power based on how much I spend on my education. Now, recall, the middle class is a loyal faction and they're powerful. So we actually want them to be stronger. So we're going to put our school system to be privately controlled. And we can also appoint a spy master. I should probably do that. These guys are useful for espionage. I'm not going to show that off here because that's not a mechanic you really need to know. And there's also this, which is an unset policy. We can pick from these. They give more benefits to each of the factions. Basically, you pick the one that you want relative to your faction. More faction effects from the middle class will further buff up our research, because you can see the middle class is giving us 38% research right now, which is actually really good. So we want to make sure we get that value as high as possible. So as I am occupying the last region of the League of Blood, we can check some more regions to colonize, maybe that one looks pretty good, and resolve the war. Now, you'll notice it takes 1.5 stability a year to integrate all of these territories, and now my stability number is up, or is only going up by 0.08. So if you take over too much in one war, you will definitely have a lot of problems. Now, look at this. Okay, so there's a few things that I have to be careful of. So first, space fleet capacity. Because I decided to make another colony, it's now less than 0. Now, you don't want this to be below 0. Now, space fleet capacity doesn't have a huge penalty, but one easy thing, if you're only in a deficit by a little bit, one of the easiest things you can do, if you just need a short-term solution, is to import more, or in our case, decrease our exports, because we were actually exporting space fleet capacity for money. And another thing is that my laborers are now upset with me. And this is because I have researched automated factories, and laborers don't much like it when you replace them with robots. So I'll have to reduce the taxes to ensure that they become more amenable to my rule. Now, actually what I should do, first of all, is queue up some of those automated factories, because they are very good. But aside from that, I should also give them another privilege. Privileges work kind of on the same thing as reforms. You can see that this privilege will be more expensive because I've already given them one. I'm going to go ahead and give them this privilege. Well, actually, no, I'm going to give them this privilege because that one's a bit too expensive. And you see, now that they're happy again, I can increase the tax rates, so that now not only do I get more taxes, but I also get more taxes off of the automated factories I'm building. So for the future, I'm going to focus on long-term things like habitability, development, and industrial capacity. Another thing is these are your culture traits. These are pretty simple. You basically think idea groups from EU4. Each culture trait has ideas that you can pick. You get more of this based on how much stability you have. So I have 66 stability with a little bit of war exhaustion, so I'm gaining 64, okay, which is good. So I'm going to pick this one because it's quite useful. It gives me more unity for my regions. Now, you might have noticed that I built universities and then forgot to explain it. Well, universities are also very important because they give you this. Now, research speed plus 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but you can get more. And they're also not that expensive, so you definitely want to do that. Other concerns is unity. So unity, you build monuments, and you can also get more by doing this. Now, this doesn't do anything right now because 1.25 unity is still 1 unity. But we can build more monuments. We can increase the power of the monuments and get more. So now that I have my sort of starting build completed, I'm basically going to be waiting until those buildings get finished and I can continue with my conquest of Mars, because that is what I want to do. So I'm going to pin this to my thing here. Now, what are these little situations here? Well, some of the larger countries, not every country is going to have one of these, but some of the larger countries will have a situation, and these give you special things that you can do with your country. So the United Colonies gets the ability to favor either Mars or Luna for different bonuses. Because we want to conquer Mars, it's probably a good idea for us to favor the Martians. Continuing, this is an interesting one. So this privilege, or not privilege, this idea is one of the most useful ones, because I can take it and now get more taxes, which I'm not going to do right now because I want my laborers to be happy. But you can see my income has increased a lot, and that is because a lot of the automated factories are finished. And again, they get more expensive the more of them you build, so you're going to want to conquer more regions in order to get more capacity, more regions to build more of those. Now, this region, which I conquered initially, has just finished integration, and that's really good, because now I don't have to pay stability for it anymore. Another thing I will bring attention to, and will probably be more visible here, is unrest. Unrest is a huge problem. A lot of people do not worry enough about unrest, because look at what it does to you. If this was at 100%, this region would be a disaster, especially large population regions. This will absolutely kill you, because you can see that it's not doing that much, okay? Because a lot of these regions have, this region, for example, has 210,000 population. That's barely going to have any impact. You can see it only has 0.67 impact, which is nothing, basically. But a 200 million population region with 100% unrest will consume like 2,000 or 3,000 industrial capacity. That's a lot, and especially in the early game, you don't have that much. So anyway, now let's look a little bit outward. You see there's these asteroid belt colonies right here, and I'm in range of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and invest some of my money to build out a colony here. And the reason I want to do that is because of these deposits. These are really good. The asteroid belt is honestly one of the best deposit systems in the entire game. You want to control this. You want to ideally prevent anyone else from controlling it too. The AI will also try to colonize these if they are in range. Our asteroid belt colony has now finished, and in the colony there is now a new culture that has formed. And this is a problem because this culture is not one of our accepted cultures yet. Now, there's a culture trait that you can get that will fix that, but you can kind of ignore it, especially if the population sizes are relatively small. But I'm going to make absolutely sure that I get this built up as fast as possible. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to give a construction subsidy to this planet. Which is, if I find it, there it is, okay? I don't really care about the admin efficiency right now since it's not getting me very much, but I need these to get done faster because the faster they get done, the more resources I get out of them. Another thing I can do is I can survey. So surveying is pretty expensive, the cost based on how far away the region is. So I'm going to survey, and look, I found more iron and more water and more nuclear fuels. Now that's really good, because that brings our iron value from 20 to 26. So when this finishes, I'm going to have a very big steel deposit coming through here. And each level of steel gives 16% project build cost, so it makes everything cheaper. So you can see that we now have a 42 refining. And these also have this little bonus right here, which can be very useful again. So this region has a development equilibrium of 5. So we should build lots of automated factories here. Now, generally speaking, the further out you go, there are cool things that you can find further out in the solar system. You can choose to rush that or to expand to it more gradually if you want. I'm going to focus more on Mars. Now that I've conquered a large portion of Mars's surface and I have some technology, there's a cool thing I can do. Now, this is very expensive, okay? Atmosformers, I may have them unlocked already, I might not. Where are they? They're right here, okay? And you can see they're extremely expensive, 833,000, and hydroformers are even more expensive, and bioformers are even more expensive. But the terraforming is extremely valuable because not only does it give Mars much more population capacity, which increases your population growth rate, which increases your tax base, but it also gives Mars a huge bonus to its resource deposits. So you know how you get a few resource deposits from surveying a region, right? Like I just found a bunch of iron. Terraforming will also survey every region on Mars once. So that means that if you terraform Mars completely, every region on Mars is gaining 3 surveys. And you can also do 1 more manual survey. So here's another thing. We've kind of run out of Unity text to research, right? Well, we can still do these 2. But we want to get interplanetary technology because there are things that are locked behind it. So you can see now we can access a lot of these higher tier technologies that we couldn't before. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to focus on getting some of these. Here is an interesting situation. So I've built up all of the factories that I can here, all the universities I can, and I'm still only getting 4. But I want more, and you can get more. You just have to look for it. So I'm going to use the expansion planner to find something with a lot of these that's close. So I can see that Mars Stable Orbit B has a really good amount of curiosities. Now you can see that curiosities are really valuable because they increase your project efficiency, which is one of the strongest modifiers. You should definitely go look for that one. And that is going to get us a lot, because if you consider that this is getting us 3.9 research sector because of this, where it gives a base value of 1, Mars Stable Orbit B, when we finish colonizing it, will give us 2 per university that we decide to build there, which is obviously really good. So at the end here, we have taken the United Colonies from a fragmented nation of pioneers to one of the solar system's great powers. You could continue from here and terraform Mars, unify humanity, and explore the stars, but I will leave the specifics of those things up to you. At the end of the day, the best way to learn is to learn by doing, and that is exactly what Solar Nations 2 is designed for. Have fun!